historians of the Galactic Concordance would later debate the precise moment the Krovan Empire's 17,000-year reign of technological supremacy began its spectacular unraveling. Some pointed to the initial reconnaissance mission. Others argued it was the moment their first intelligence reports came back from Earth. But everyone agreed on one fundamental truth: the Krovans had spectacularly underestimated humanity. The Krovan Empire wasn't just another spacefaring civilization. They were the apex predators of galactic politics, a species that had transformed conquest into an art form so refined it was practically bureaucratic poetry. Their civilization was a meticulously organized machine of expansion, where every conquered species was cataloged, processed, and integrated with the same methodical precision one might apply to sorting paperclips. Their biology reflected their cultural ethos. The Krovans were a silicon-based life form that looked like a cross between a Komodo dragon and an advanced supercomputer. Iridescent scales covered muscular frames that could withstand extreme gravitational pressures. Multiple redundant neural networks were distributed throughout their bodies, allowing them to process complex strategic calculations in microseconds. Each Krovan was essentially a living, breathing tactical supercomputer. Their technological advancement was so profound that most species they encountered seemed like primitive cave dwellers by comparison. Faster-than-light travel, standard infrastructure, planetary terraforming, a weekend project, quantum entanglement communication, about as complicated to them as sending a text messages to humans. Admiral Krell Vexnamath exemplified everything about Krovan military leadership. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed sculpted from living titanium and consciousness algorithms, he represented generations of refined genetic and technological optimization. His personal history was a testament to Krovan efficiency: 300 successful planetary subjugations, 0 losses, multiple commendations from the Imperial Expansion Council. On the bridge of the immovable dominance of battleships so massive it could eclipse entire moons, Krell reviewed the preliminary data on humanity with the detached curiosity of a scientist examining an interesting but ultimately inconsequential microbe. Sub-Commander Drix, he called, his translator device converting his complex click-frequency language into standard galactic common, compile a comprehensive report on human communication and organizational structures. Drix was a younger officer, her scales still displaying the nervous blue-green hue of someone not yet fully confident in her abilities. Her tentacle-like data interfaces were already interfacing with multiple communication arrays, parsing through terabytes of human digital content in milliseconds. Initial observations are confusing, Admiral, she reported, her translation matrix struggling to maintain professional composure. Their communication networks appear chaotic, decentralized, and fundamentally illogical. The main holographic display erupted with a cacophony of human digital content. YouTube tutorials sat alongside conspiracy theory forums. Twitter arguments about political ideologies were interspersed with Reddit threads discussing obscure mathematical proofs. TikTok dance videos competed for bandwidth with academic research papers. They seemed to have no centralized information control, Drix continued, her bewilderment growing. Multiple competing narratives exist simultaneously. Their information distribution systems appear to reward both extreme creativity and extreme nonsense with equal enthusiasm. Krell's secondary neural network, the one dedicated to strategic analysis, began running probability simulations. Each scenario returned the same fundamental conclusion: this species was fundamentally unassimilable. Documentation suggests they have multiple governance systems, Drix added, scrolling through diplomatic records. Democratic republics, communist states, constitutional monarchies. They can't even agree on a single method of societal organization. What the Krovans didn't understand, what they could never comprehend with their hierarchical, logic-driven mentality, was that human complexity was a feature, not a bug. Humanity's greatest strength was its beautiful, chaotic unpredictability. Where the Krovans saw weakness, they were about to discover the most adaptive, resilient species the galaxy had ever encountered. The decision to add Earth to the Krovan Empire's conquest ledger was made with the same bureaucratic efficiency they applied to everything. A simple administrative choice: humanity would be their 18,001st successful integration. They were laughably, catastrophically wrong. The galaxy was about to get a masterclass in human ingenuity. Jack Riker was not your typical military strategist. While most high-ranking officers looked like they'd been chiseled from granite and polished within an inch of their lives, Jack looked like he'd just rolled out of a dive bar after a particularly intense chess tournament. His office at the United Earth Strategic Defense Command was a testament to organized chaos. Holographic displays competed for space with half-empty coffee mugs, vintage Star Trek memorabilia, and what appeared to be a collection of increasingly bizarre stress relief toys. A three-dimensional chess set sat in one corner, pieces positioned in a configuration that would make grandmasters weep or laugh hysterically. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez, her digital tablet projected a series of increasingly bizarre alien communication intercepts. "The Krovan intelligence reports are. Well, there's something." Jack leaned back in his chair, a vintage leather monstrosity that had survived 3 global conflicts and what he liked to call his experimental management phase. His eyes, a peculiar shade of green that seemed to change based on his mood and caffeine intake, scanned the holographic data. "Something good? Or something we're about to get invaded good?" he asked, reaching for a mug that was either coffee or a science experiment at this point. Maria's laugh was sharp enough to cut through military-grade titanium. "Depends on your definition of good, sir. They think we're a joke. A literal administrative footnote in their conquest ledger." The Krovan intelligence reports were a masterpiece of unintentional comedy. They had categorized humanity under multiple ridiculous classifications. Technological capability primitive, reliant on fossil fuels and chemical propulsion. Social structure chaotic. Multiple competing narratives. No central control. Military preparedness minimal. Scattered defensive capabilities, easily subdued. Cultural complexity irrelevant. Dominated by entertainment and trivial communication. Jack knew better. Humanity's seeming weakness was its greatest strength. "They're looking at our external systems," he muttered, more to himself than to Maria. "But they're not seeing what's underneath." What the Krovans didn't understand was that humans had spent centuries preparing for potential extraterrestrial threats, not out of paranoia, but out of a weird combination of scientific curiosity and Hollywood-inspired preparedness. The Global Xenological Preparedness Initiative, or GXPI, was a secret program that made the Manhattan Project look like a high school science fair. Established in 2047, it had been quietly developing technologies, strategies, and contingency plans for every possible alien encounter scenario. Scenario A: peaceful first contact. Scenario B: limited military engagement. Scenario C: full-scale invasion. Scenario D: what if they look like giant space squids and won our oceans? Each scenario had multiple sub-scenarios. Each sub-scenario had backup plans, and each backup plan had emergency protocols. Jack had personally been involved in developing Scenario C7, technologically superior alien empire attempts systematic conquest. It was a pet project that most of his colleagues had found simultaneously hilarious and impossible. Who was laughing now? The military-industrial complex that most people thought was just about making fancy weapons had been quietly preparing something far more interesting. While the world saw military technology as tanks, jets, and missiles, the real advancement was happening in adaptive systems, psychological warfare, and technological mimicry. Humans had a unique ability to rapidly iterate and improve technologies. What took the Krovans generations, humans could accomplish in months. Their scientific method wasn't just about incremental improvement, it was about radical, sometimes borderline insane innovation. "They're going to try and communicate formally soon," Maria said, pulling up a diplomatic transmission sequence. "Standard galactic protocol suggests they'll issue a formal declaration of, well, basically telling us to surrender." Jack's smile was something between a grin and a wolf preparing to laugh at its prey. "Let them," he said. "Let's show them exactly what humanity is made of." The galaxy was about to get a masterclass in human unpredictability, and Jack Riker was going to enjoy every single moment of it. Little did the Krovans know, humanity had been preparing for this moment its entire existence, not out of fear, not out of aggression, but out of an absolutely delightful sense of, "Oh, you think you can take us? Watch this." The official Krovan declaration of war arrived with all the pomp and bureaucratic precision of a galactic tax audit. It was a 742-page document, translated into 94 interstellar languages, complete with detailed subsections, legal addendums, and what appeared to be a comprehensive filing receipt. Admiral Krell Vex Namath personally transmitted the document, expecting the traditional response of immediate surrender that had characterized every other species' interaction with the Krovan Empire. The first hint that something was different came from the human response. It was a single message. 3 words long. "Bring it on." Communication protocols in the Krovan military had specific procedures for every possible first contact scenario: peaceful negotiation, diplomatic submission, resistance protocols, strategic capitulation. Nowhere in their extensive databases did they have a protocol for Bring It On. The initial military engagement began precisely 72 hours after the declaration. The Krovans deployed their standard invasion strategy, a method so refined it had worked consistently for 17,000 years. Stage 1: Overwhelming technological superiority. The Krovan fleet approached Earth's solar system with a formation that would have made any other civilization spontaneously surrender. 3,000 battleships, each the size of a small moon. Quantum-shielded hulls. Plasma cannons that could vaporize entire planetary continents. Faster-than-light communication systems. Adaptive AI combat algorithms that could predict enemy movements with 99.997% accuracy. Their first wave consisted of what they considered a minimal intervention force, roughly 500 ships designed to demonstrate technological superiority and encourage immediate surrender. What they didn't know was that humanity had been watching and preparing. In the underground facilities of the Global Xenological Preparedness Initiative, teams had been running simulations. Not just military simulations, psychological simulations, cultural adaptation simulations, technological mimicry simulations. Jack Riker stood in the Central Command Center, a facility so deeply buried that it could survive a direct meteor strike, let alone an alien invasion. Multiple holographic displays showed the approaching Krovan fleet, each system analyzed, categorized, and potentially exploited. "They're using a standard triangular dominance formation," muttered Dr. Elena Kozlov, the lead xenotechnological strategist. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, running simultaneous analysis protocols. Textbook Krovan invasion approach. Designed to psychologically overwhelm before first contact. Jack's response was a snort that suggested he found the entire concept amusing. Textbook. Right. The first engagement happened not with weapons, but with something far more unexpected: communication. As the Krovan fleet approached the edge of the solar system, they received a transmission. Not from military command, not from a government facility. It came from a live stream. A young woman, wearing what appeared to be a vintage NASA t-shirt and surrounded by an assortment of technological equipment that looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts, was broadcasting to the entire Krovan fleet. "Hi," she said, waving with a coffee mug in her hand. "Welcome to Earth. We've been expecting you." The transmission was simultaneously broadcast on every Krovan communication channel. No encryption, no formal protocols, just a direct, almost casual invitation. Sub-Commander Drix's tentacle interfaces went into complete neural shock. This is not standard first contact procedure," she stammered to Admiral Krell. Krell's secondary neural network was running thousands of potential scenarios. None of them included a casual greeting from a human holding a coffee mug. The woman continued, seemingly unaware of the massive military implications of her broadcast. "So, alien invasion. Cool. We've got some ground rules." She proceeded to list what could only be described as the most bizarre invasion guidelines in galactic history. No destroying major cities before 9 a.m. local time. People need their coffee. Avoid Wednesdays. It's already a terrible day. Let's not make it worse. Mandatory cultural exchange program. You guys look interesting. Let's talk. The Krovan military leadership stared in collective bewilderment. This was not how invasions were supposed to work. Humanity was about to teach them a lesson in unexpected complexity, and they were going to enjoy every moment of it. The first actual combat engagement was nothing like any military encounter in galactic history. The Krovan fleet, still processing the bizarre preliminary transmission, launched their standard initial assault. Quantum-phase plasma torpedoes capable of instantly vaporizing entire continental regions streaked towards Earth's defensive perimeters. Each missile represented technological sophistication that had conquered thousands of civilizations. What happened next would be studied by xenomilitary historians for generations. Instead of traditional defensive countermeasures, energy shields, missile interception systems, or desperate evasive maneuvers, humanity responded with something completely unprecedented. They hacked the missiles. Dr. Elena Kozlov, working from a mobile command center that looked more like a modified RV than a military installation, was leading what could only be described as the most audacious technological intervention in military history. "Target acquisition locked," she muttered, her fingers flying across holographic interfaces, redirecting quantum entanglement protocols. "Let's have some fun." The Krovan missiles, each a marvel of computational engineering, suddenly found themselves reprogrammed mid-flight. Instead of destructive trajectories, they began performing increasingly complex aerial maneuvers. They spelled out messages. They drew elaborate geometric patterns. One missile actually traced the entire periodic table of elements across the stratosphere. Admiral Krell watched in absolute, fundamental confusion. They are playing with our weapons, Sub-Commander Drix reported, her neural interfaces struggling to process the information. Our most advanced technological weapons are being used as entertainment. Jack Riker, watching from the underground command center, was laughing so hard he was in genuine risk of falling out of his chair. The human response wasn't just technological. It was psychological warfare taken to an entirely new level. As Krovan ships maintained their invasion formation, they started receiving transmissions, not threats, not desperate pleas, but something far more bewildering. Memes, thousands of them. Millions. An endless stream of internet humor that was simultaneously incomprehensible and strangely compelling. Each meme was carefully crafted to exploit the specific cognitive processing patterns of the Krovan neural networks. A picture of a cat doing something absurd would be accompanied by precisely calculated informational payload that would cause momentary cognitive dissonance in Krovan computational systems. "We're not just defending," Elena explained to Jack. "We're systematically introducing computational chaos into their systems." The Krovan military had extensive protocols for resistance. They had strategies for technological counter-arguments. They had entire academic disciplines dedicated to understanding potential conflict scenarios. They did not have a protocol for being trolled by an entire planet. Each Krovan ship's communication systems became increasingly compromised. Navigation algorithms started displaying random internet videos. Tactical displays would suddenly erupt into dance tutorials. Critical military frequencies were hijacked to broadcast everything from cooking shows to competitive knitting championships. The invasion wasn't just being resisted. It was being fundamentally confused. Jack watched the holographic displays with a mix of professional military assessment and pure, unadulterated joy. They expected a conventional war, he said, more to himself than anyone else. We're giving them an existential crisis. Military engagement transformed into something that defied every known galactic conflict protocol. The Krovans weren't facing a traditional enemy. They were facing a species that had weaponized unpredictability. Quantum missiles continued their bizarre aerial ballet. Meme transmissions flooded Krovan communication networks. And somewhere, buried deep in a command center, humanity was having the time of its life. The galaxy was about to learn a fundamental lesson about human creativity. Resistance wasn't just futile. It was about to become absolutely hilarious. The moment everything changed wasn't a singular event. It was a cascading series of realizations that would fundamentally alter the Krovan understanding of warfare, intelligence, and the very nature of adaptive species. Deep within the immovable dominance, Admiral Krell-Vexnamath's neural networks began experiencing something unprecedented: genuine confusion. Their invasion had devolved from a standard military operation into what could only be described as a planetary-scale psychological experiment. The human resistance wasn't just technological, it was a multi-layered assault on the very concept of military engagement. Dr. Elena Kozlov had transformed warfare into an art form of calculated chaos. Communication Intercept Protocol Delta 9 engaged, she announced to Jack Riker, her voice a mix of professional military precision and barely contained excitement. We're going to give them something they've never seen before. The next phase of human resistance was nothing short of revolutionary. Krovan military doctrine was built on absolute predictability. Their computational systems were designed to analyze, predict, and counter any potential threat with mathematical precision. They had conquered thousands of civilizations by reducing warfare to a series of calculable variables. Humans turned those variables into a choose-your-own-adventure nightmare. The Global Xenological Preparedness Initiative had spent decades developing what they internally called adaptive response protocols, a series of defensive strategies so complex and interconnected that they defied traditional military logic. Imagine a military defense system that wasn't just reactive but proactively nonsensical. When Krovan ships attempted standard planetary approach vectors, they discovered satellite networks that communicated using complex internet meme languages, defense systems that responded to incoming threats with mathematical equations, communication arrays that broadcast simultaneous contradictory information. defensive platforms that could instantly reconfigure based on real-time internet trending topics. Jack watched the holographic displays with a grin that could only be described as maniacal. "They're trying to understand us," he muttered. "And that's exactly what we don't want." The turning point came during what the Krovans considered their most sophisticated assault wave. 300 ships configured in a quantum-entangled attack formation that had never failed in 17,000 years of galactic conquest. As they approached Earth's orbital perimeter, something extraordinary happened. Every single Krovan ship simultaneously received a transmission. Not a weapon, not a threat, but something far more disruptive. It was a Wikipedia article. Not just any Wikipedia article. A meticulously crafted, hyperlinked monstrosity that contained detailed information about human cultural phenomena, recursive references that created infinite information loops, quantum-encoded data packets that would take Krovan computational systems centuries to fully process, deliberate informational contradictions that would cause neural network cascading failures. Sub-Commander Drix's tentacle interfaces began to twitch uncontrollably. The information. "It doesn't follow any standard communication protocol," she reported, her voice rising in pitch. "It's simultaneously historical, speculative, factual, and completely nonsensical." The Wikipedia transmission was a weapon of mass cognitive disruption. Each hyperlink was a potential computational trap. Each reference was a potential system breakdown. Krovan ships began experiencing what could only be described as computational existential crises. Navigation systems started displaying random Earth cultural references. Tactical displays erupted into detailed explanations of human internet subcultures. Critical military frequencies were hijacked to broadcast elaborate conspiracy theory rabbit holes. Admiral Krell watched in fundamental disbelief as his most advanced warships became victims of informational warfare so sophisticated it bordered on performance art. "This isn't a defense," he muttered, his multiple neural networks struggling to process the incoming data. "This is psychological warfare elevated to a quantum level." Humanity wasn't just resisting. They were redefining the entire concept of conflict. The Krovan Empire, for the first time in 17,000 years, found itself completely, utterly outmaneuvered. And they were about to learn that humans were just getting started. The official Krovan surrender wasn't a moment of military defeat. It was an existential breakdown. Admiral Krell Vex Namath stood, or more accurately, trembled before the Imperial Galactic Council, his once impeccable iridescent scales now a mottled, confused palette of grays and blues. The holographic transmission showed a being that looked like he'd been through the most comprehensive psychological deconstruction in galactic history. He began, then stopped, restarted, stopped again. The council members leaned forward. In 17,000 years of galactic dominance, they had never seen an admiral struggle to articulate a military report. Jack Riker, watching the transmission from a slightly modified government RV that served as a mobile command center, couldn't help but grin. Dr. Elena Kozlov was cackling so hard she was in genuine risk of falling out of her chair. The surrender document was a masterpiece of bureaucratic confusion. It ran 2,743 pages, with appendices that seemed to reference everything from quantum physics to human internet memes. The Krovan legal team had attempted to create a surrender protocol that maintained some semblance of their historical dignity. They failed spectacularly. Page 1247, subsection Gamma 9, actually included a footnote that read, "We have no idea what just happened. Please advise." The galactic media, a complex network of information exchange that spanned thousands of civilizations, was having an absolute field day. For the first time in millennia, the Krovan Empire looked vulnerable. What had actually happened defied every known military engagement protocol. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Krovans. They had fundamentally broken their understanding of conflict, intelligence, and adaptive strategy. The key moments of the conflict, if one could even call it, that were already becoming legendary. The meme-based psychological warfare. The quantum missiles performing aerial ballet. The Wikipedia transmission that caused computational existential crises. The defense systems that could reconfigure based on internet trending topics. Multiple alien civilizations were simultaneously terrified and fascinated. They weaponized unpredictability, one Zorblaxian diplomatic analyst was recorded saying. They turned chaos into a strategic advantage. The aftermath was equally bizarre. The Krovan Empire, for the first time in its history, requested a cultural exchange program. Not as conquerors, but as students. Jack discovered this when he received an official transmission requesting of all things access to human internet archives, comedy shows, and something called cat videos. They want to understand us, Elena said, reviewing the diplomatic requests, not conquer us. Understand us. The Global Xenological Preparedness Initiative had prepared for many scenarios. Peaceful first contact, limited military engagement, full-scale invasion. They had not prepared for an alien civilization requesting Netflix recommendations. Sub-Commander Drix, who had been at the center of the human resistance experience, submitted a personal research request that became instantly famous across galactic communication networks. Her doctoral thesis titled Humanity: A Species That Weaponizes Randomness as a Fundamental Survival Strategy. The Krovan Imperial Library received the first draft. The reviewing committee reportedly required extensive psychological counseling afterward. Jack Riker's final report to Earth's military leadership was a masterpiece of understatement. Situation resolved. Turns out being weird works. In the grand tapestry of galactic civilization, humanity had just written itself a completely unexpected chapter. Not through overwhelming force. Not through technological superiority. But through an absolutely stunning ability to be comprehensively, magnificently unpredictable. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere, in a command center filled with vintage Star Trek memorabilia and half-empty coffee mugs, humanity was just getting started.